1974. A family living paycheck to paycheck, cracking jokes to keep from crying, and somehow making 40 million Americans laugh every single week. That was Good Times, the first sitcom in television history built around a two-parent black family. Half a century later, some of these actors are still working, still touring, still signing autographs at conventions. Others are gone. A few lived lives every bit as dramatic as anything the picture Chicago's Cabrini Green housing project, recreated on a CBS soundstage and shows writers could have dreamed up. Here's where the cast of Good Times is now, and what really happened to them along the way. Esther Rall was already 51 years old and a respected New York stage actress, a veteran of the Negro Ensemble Company, when Norman Lear cast her as Florida Evans on Maude in 1972. 2 years later, she got her own spin-off. Rall had grown up the 10th of 18 children to Bahamian immigrant parents in Pompano Beach, Florida, put herself through a garment district day job while working New York theater at night, and eventually studied at Yale. When she signed on to play Florida, she made one condition non-negotiable: the family needed a father. That insistence is the reason James Evans Sr. existed at all. Rall's relationship with the show was never simple. She and co-star John Amos both felt that as Jimmy Walker's JJ and his Dynamite catchphrase became a cultural sensation, the show drifted away from the serious themes it was built on and leaned harder into comedy. Amos was let go after the third season. A year later, in 1977, Rall left too. Her character was written off to marry Carl Dixon and moved to Arizona. The show's ratings slid, and producers eventually talked her into returning for the sixth and final season. After Good Times, Rall kept working steadily. In 1979, she won an Emmy for the TV movie Summer of My German Soldier, becoming the first black actress to win in that category, and went on to notable film roles in Driving Miss Daisy, 1989, and Rosewood, 1997. She married Oscar Robinson in 1955. The marriage ended in divorce in 1975, and she had no biological children, though her husband had a daughter from an earlier marriage. In her later years, Rall battled diabetes, and by the time of her death, she was on kidney dialysis. She died on November 17, 1998, in Culver City, California, 9 days after her 78th birthday, and was laid to rest in her hometown of Pompano Beach. Just months before she died, she was quietly reunited on television with her old Maude co-star Bea Arthur, the two embracing after more than 25 years apart. John Amos came to acting sideways. Born in Newark, New Jersey, in 1939, he tried out for the Denver Broncos and Kansas City Chiefs before a football career panned out, then worked as a social worker and copywriter before landing a role as a comic weatherman on the Mary Tyler Moore Show. Good Times, starting in 1974, turned him into the face of a very different kind of television father, stern, hardworking, unmistakably in charge. Amos didn't hide his frustration with the show's direction. He argued in interviews that the writers, none of whom were black, didn't understand what a real black father and family looked like, and he pushed back hard on how much comic weight was being put on JJ at the expense of Thelma and Michael stories. The disagreement got him fired after the third season. His character was written out via an off-screen car accident. He and Norman Lear eventually reconciled, memorably hugging at a 2019 Good Times reunion special. Amos's career didn't stall, it expanded. His performance as the adult Kunta Kinte in 1977's Roots earned him an Emmy nomination and reached one of the largest television audiences in American history. He went on to play Cleo McDowell in Coming to America, 1988, and its 2021 sequel, appeared in Die Hard 2, and worked steadily into his 80s. His final years, though, were shadowed by a bitter, very public family dispute. His daughter Shannon accused her brother, Kelly Christopher Casey Amos, of isolating and financially exploiting their father, allegations Casey firmly denied. Both an LAPD elder abuse investigation and a related inquiry in New Jersey closed without any charges being filed. Amos died on August 21, 2024, in Los Angeles, of congestive heart failure. His death wasn't publicly announced until October, which only fueled the family's ongoing dispute over how his final months were handled. He was 84. Jimmy Walker grew up in the Bronx, got his start in stand-up in the late 1960s, and was performing on Rowan and Martin's Laugh-In and The Jack Paar Show when a Good Times casting director spotted him. As J.J. Evans, his catchphrase "Dynamite" became one of the most quoted lines in 1970s television, and by his co-stars' own accounts, a genuine source of tension on set, since Raul and Amos felt it was overshadowing the show's more grounded storylines. Walker leaned into stand-up for the rest of his career rather than away from it, releasing a comedy album during the show's run and touring clubs and theaters for decades afterward, alongside guest spots on shows like Scrubs, Everybody Hates Chris, and The George Lopez Show. He published a memoir, Dynamite, Good Times, Bad Times, Our Times, in 2012, and reunited with the cast for a well-received 2019 live TV recreation of a classic episode. He is never married and has no children. Estimates of his current net worth vary wildly across sources, from under $1 million to considerably more, which mostly reflects how murky celebrity finance reporting tends to be rather than anything definitive about his situation. Now in his late 70s, Walker still performs stand-up regularly. Jonette Dubois played Willona Woods, Florida's sharp-tongued, independent best friend and neighbor, and later Penny's adoptive mother. Off-camera, Dubois had a parallel career as a singer and songwriter. She co-wrote and sang Movin' On Up, the indelible theme song to The Jeffersons. In the 1990s, she won 2 Emmy Awards for voice work on the animated series The PJs, and she appeared in films, including Charlie's Angels, Full Throttle, and Tropic Thunder well into her 70s. Dubois's personal life carried real sorrow. Her son, Raj Christo Gupta, died of cancer in 1987 after a 3-year illness. He was 36. Dubois herself was famously private about her age and kept mostly to herself in her later years, according to her Good Times co-star Bernadette Stanis, who said Dubois had appeared to be in good health at a signing event just 2 weeks before her death. Jonette Dubois died in her sleep at her Glendale, California home on February 17, 2020, at 74. Her death certificate listed cardiac arrest, with chronic kidney disease and hypertension as contributing factors. She was cremated, with some of her ashes scattered at sea. Bernadette Stanis was an 18-year-old Juilliard student, born and raised in Brooklyn, when she was cast as Thelma, making her one of the first black teenage girls to be a regular character on network television. She married 4 times over the years, including to her high school sweetheart, and she's now married to Kevin Fontana. She has 2 daughters, Dior and Brittany. Rather than disappearing after the show ended in 1979, Stanis built a second career as an author, writing several books including Situations 101, Relationships, and, more personally, The Last Night, A Caregiver's Journey, drawn from her experience caring for her mother, who died of Alzheimer's complications in 2011. That loss turned Stanis into a vocal advocate for Alzheimer's awareness, and she still tours extensively for book signings and speaking engagements, including at military bases across the country. She published a memoir in recent years, Good Times, Ain't We Lucky We Got M, co-written with her daughter Brittany, and has continued acting in projects like Tyler Perry's The Family Business. Now in her early 70s, Stanis remains one of the most visible and active members of the original cast. Before he was ever cast as Michael Evans, the Evans family's youngest, whom his TV father affectionately called the Militant Midget, Ralph Carter was already a Broadway veteran. He debuted at age 9 in The Me Nobody Knows and, at just 12, earned a Tony nomination for his role in the musical Raisin. Based on a raisin in the Sun, Norman Lear was reportedly so impressed that he bought out the remainder of Carter's Broadway contract to bring him onto Good Times. Carter released 2 albums during and after the show's run, including 1970's XS Young and In Love, and continued performing music through the 1980s. Rumors have circulated for years, including false claims that he had died or become a minister, but Carter has simply kept a lower public profile than some of his castmates, remaining a lifelong Brooklyn resident and community activist. He has taught in early childhood development programs, written more than 20 children's books, and holds leadership roles with cultural arts organizations in New York, including serving as an officer of the Audelco Awards, which honor Black theater artists. He has spoken warmly in interviews about how much John Amos and Esther Rawls shaped him personally, calling them mentors as much as co-stars. He is 65 now and still occasionally performs. Janet Jackson was 11 years old when she joined Good Times in its 5th season as Penny, a child suffering abuse at the hands of her biological mother before being adopted by Willona, a storyline that dealt with real domestic abuse more directly than most sitcoms of its era attempted. It was Jackson's first major acting role, well before Control, 1986, and Rhythm Nation 1814, 1989, made her one of the defining pop artists of her generation. The rest of Jackson's story is, of course, well documented. More than 100 million records sold, multiple Grammy wins, a Rock and Roll Hall of Fame induction, and a career that has weathered real public controversy, most notably the fallout from the 2004 Super Bowl halftime show, as well as personal loss, including the death of her brother Michael in 2009. She kept working through all of it, releasing Unbreakable in 2015 and touring as recently as her Together Again shows in 2024 and a limited Las Vegas residency in 2025. She turned 60 in May 2026 and headed to Japan for tour dates that June. Of everyone who passed through the Evans household, Jackson's post-Good Times career reshaped popular music itself. Johnny Brown played Nathan Bookman, the long-suffering building superintendent who bore the brunt of the Evans family's jokes. Buffalo Butt and Booger among the kinder nicknames for the show's later seasons. He came to the role after 3 seasons as a regular on Rowan and Martin's Laugh-In, a contract that, by his account, actually cost him the role of Lamont on Sanford and Son, which went to Demond Wilson instead. Brown had already spent years as a protege of Sammy Davis Jr., recording singles for Columbia and Atlantic Records and building a career on Broadway before television. He was married to June Russell Brown for over 60 years. In his final years, he had a pacemaker. On March 2, 2022, he collapsed shortly after leaving a routine pacemaker checkup and went into cardiac arrest. He died shortly afterward at the hospital at age 84. His daughter, Broadway actress and composer Sharon Catherine Brown, announced the news, writing that he'd been literally snatched out of our lives. Moses Gunn had one of the most respected stage careers of anyone who ever appeared on Good Times, joining as a recurring cast member for a 6-episode arc as Carl Dixon, the appliance shop owner who eventually marries Florida and takes her out of the projects. Long before that, Gunn had co-founded the Negro Ensemble Company in 1968, won an Obie for playing Aaron in Titus Andronicus, earned a Tony nomination for The Poison Tree, and played Othello on Broadway. On screen, he's remembered for playing Bumpy Jonas in Shaft and Booker T. Washington in Ragtime, 1981, a performance that won him an NAACP Image Award, plus an Emmy nomination for his role in Roots. Gunn married Gwendolyn Mama Landis in 1966. They had a son, Justin, who became a musician. Gunn worked steadily into his 60s, stepping away from performing only when illness forced him to. He died on December 16, 1993, at his home in Guilford, Connecticut, of complications from asthma, at age 64. Ben Powers, born Alton Adelbert Powers, joined Good Times for its 6th and final season as Keith Anderson, the professional football player who marries Thelma. Before that, he trained at Trinity Repertory Theater in Providence, Rhode Island, done stand-up and celebrity impressions in Playboy clubs, and spent a season as a cast member on the 1977 revival of Laugh-In. Bernadette Stanis has spoken fondly of working with him, recalling that he treated me like a queen. After Good Times, Powers worked steadily in supporting television and film roles through the 1980s, including Cheech and Chong's Next Movie. He married Julia Harper in 1981. They had 4 daughters, including a set of twins. Harper died in 2012. Powers died on April 6, 2015, in New Bedford, Massachusetts, at age 64. His official cause of death was liver cancer. Chip Fields, born Laverne Bernard, played Lynetta Gordon. The abusive mother whose slap across young Janet Jackson's face became one of Good Times' most talked-about single moments, in a 4-episode arc in 1977. Fields had actually brought her own daughter to audition for the role of Penny. The part went to Jackson instead. That daughter was Kim Fields, who would go on to become a star in her own right as Tootie on The Facts of Life. with Chip playing her mother on that show too, and later on Living Single, where she again played her real-life daughter's TV mom. Fields moved increasingly behind the camera as she got older, becoming a busy television director on shows, including Girlfriends, The Parkers, House of Pain, and more recently, Tyler Perry's Young Dylan, where she directed dozens of episodes. She raised two actress daughters, Kim and Alexis, has been married to technical director of Heard since 1994, and now in her mid-70s, remains professionally active as both a director and a dialogue coach. Good Times ran for 6 seasons, but its cast story stretched across 5 decades, Emmys, Tony nominations, a Rock and Roll Hall of Fame induction, and for several of them, genuine hardship near the end. Which one of these stories surprised you most? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more deep dives into the actors behind the shows that shaped television history.